Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learning. I'm delighted to be joined today by Sherrie Storor, who is a mentor, speaker and real estate coach over in Australia, who comes incredibly highly recommended by so many people. So no pressure, Sherrie.
I'll try and live up to whatever you've heard. Hopefully all true.
Oh, it's all true. It's all true. Anyway, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm wonderful. And I'm so excited because I've heard so many amazing things about you from so many people. But especially from Steve Carroll, just giving a massive shout out to Steve. He's the one who originally suggested that we get in contact with each other. So I'm pumped that we're finally, connecting and doing lunchtime learning.
Amazing. Well, I saw Steve recently. He managed to organise a tour of News UK, and we had a fantastic day there. And I'm meeting him, I think, in a month's time as well, where we're meeting somebody else, another, I think, ahead of a big group of agents here. So looking forward to that. So Tell us a little bit about yourself. So I know you were in agency. So start from the beginning. How did you get involved?
Well, I guess what I do today is probably not too dissimilar to yourself. So I work with agents and agencies all over Australasia, and essentially I help them to build their business. And I do this by implementing proven sales systems and structures, by helping them to build out teams, by helping them to build out sort of celebrity profiles. And the whole goal of doing this is to build more revenue and more profit, but while working a whole lot less, right? So the whole aim of the game is, to have a life that's full of wealth and freedom.
Okay, I love that. And I'm going to come back to a couple of things you said there, implementation and celebrity profiles. But before I do that, I want to dig deeper. How did you get involved? Because I know you were at Place, and I think you were also at McGrath as well. So what were the lessons that you learned at Place and McGrath to get you that catapulted you to become a coach?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think perhaps we need to, my background is originally I'm a project marketer, so selling properties off the plan. And, my background was that I was working in retail. I actually have a PR and media kind of studies degree, but I was working in retail managing jewelry stores. And so I would go into an underperforming store and turn it around into a high performing store. And so when I decided that it was kind of time for a change, and I'm talking about, a 20-year-old here who wants to take over the world, my friend, a very dear friend of mine, was working in real estate, selling off the plan house and land packages in Brisbane. And she said, Sherrie, listen, you would love working in real estate. And so that's kind of how it all happened. And so after a few years of selling off the plan, I started my own chain of agencies. So I had my company called Address. And so we were located selling off the plan in 10 different locations along the east coast of Australia, and specifically in Queensland. So in 10 different locations, places like Cairns and Port Douglas and Mission Beach and the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast and Byron Bay, and, all of these very sort of sexy Queensland and northern New South Wales places. And, during this time, I also had a PR division because we would launch big projects with huge budgets. And then, I had a property management division or a rep role, which I built up and sold. And I also had 45 agents working in the business as well in terms of the residential division. So it was quite a decent sized business, lots and lots of stress. I learned a lot of what to do and what not to do. And so I guess that's kind of a bit of my background. From there, I went on to become the director of residential at Colliers. But really, I got back on the tools, getting my hands dirty. Stephen, I love selling. And so I started working at Place, as you mentioned. And, that was quite a challenge because we're talking about 2011 now. So, quite a few years ago. But the last time that I had sold in Australia was on the tools was in 2003, 2004. And during that time, that was a very, very busy time. And literally we would take pictures with our Canon cameras and we would load them up to realestate.com, and they would sort of sell for, 10, 20% more than what we put them on for. And they would sell within 24 hours. And then here I was back again on the tools in 2011, where we just had some floods in Brisbane and we had in excess of 31,000 properties on the market. And because there was so much choice, the kind of decision was indecision and no one was really buying. So I went from this boom market selling into this really challenging market. And so I got skilled up as quickly as possible. I sold out and I literally got back on the tools. So, I had to rebuild my profile because obviously, people didn't really know who I was as a CEO. I had to really build my profile again as a residential real estate agent and do it very, very quickly to make some pretty decent money. And so from there, I went on to McGrath. And, I loved working at McGrath. I loved it for so many reasons. But, we mentioned, and we were talking off air before about John McGrath, and I'm very privileged to have done a couple of listing presentations with John in my time. But, I loved the idea of really looking at, business, not just necessarily in Queensland and Northern New South Wales, but from a more national sort of bigger scale. And so that was lovely to kind of build my network through there. But on the side, I've been business coaching since 2008. And so, I decided to give up my day job, probably getting close to 7 years ago now, and do this kind of soulful endeavor, which is giving back to our industry. Because a lot of the time when we would hear coaches on stage, they were giving kind of big picture, not necessarily, what steps to kind of implement. And I love that we're going to talk about that shortly. So I was really passionate about this. And I also felt at the time in Australia and New Zealand, we didn't really have a lot of female sort of coaches and certainly not a lot of female role models on the stage. So, I just knew so many female powerhouses. And, I realized after a period of time, well, listen, if no one else is going to do it, it's kind of up to me. So I went from having a job to, a career to a business to now, what is really a kind of a soulful purpose and trying to give back to the industry in a really meaningful way. That's what I try to do anyway.
Brilliant. I don't know where to start now. You've given me so many questions to ask you. Right, I'm going to go all the way back. So retail.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What did you learn from retail?
Oh, look, retail was fantastic. I had always worked in retail, since I was a child, and that was always my part-time job. I think what I love about retail, even in encouraging people to employ those working in retail now, is the customer's always right. And you are just working. You're used to working sort of all sorts of hours. You're used to standing up on your feet and just really going for it. I think, retail, it is about very much a sales process. And a lot of the businesses that I worked for, definitely had some sales processes and training. We were very much about personality testing and getting the most from every single person who worked in the business. And, I was a young person, so it was really wonderful for me to try and learn some real leadership skills from somebody who was kind of, at a young age thought I knew it all. So I think retail is a wonderful avenue for real estate agents, because particularly jewelry, because they're very, jewelry salespeople are used to selling the dream and selling the concept and selling the status and selling the investment. And so, for me, I always, am very grateful for that sort of start, I guess, in my career.
Okay, thank you. You talked about boom to challenging market. So, I suppose you could argue COVID boomed, definitely here, became a lot more challenging, interest rates going up, cost of living going up as well.
Yes.
Coming to Eric recently, I understood that you've got exactly the same challenges that we've got over here. So again, for people that haven't seen the challenging market, how did you deal with that, and what tips could you give people watching this?
Yeah, I think the first one is just understanding what goes up must come down. And so if it's down, it must also go up. So I think that's also really reassuring, no matter which stage of the market that you're in. So I think, it's just a matter of time in either direction. So, if you're in a good market, you've got to squirrel away your money and be prepared, because around the corner you are going to have a challenging one. I think in the challenging markets, those agents who have really built trust in with their marketplace, do tend to be more successful, because we do lose, agents to other endeavors and other industries. So, what I'm talking about is just making sure that they do a very good job every single time. So, following a system and a procedure, asking for testimonials, really making sure that they're doing all that they can to, market the property well, to display it well, to do fantastic, open homes and private inspections, but then also to negotiate it really well. And, not just as soon as settlement's kind of over, just forget about them, but, continue that sort of long-term relationship so that, when they're looking to sell in the future, that you're that first point of call. So I think, having that real strong lead nurture process is so incredibly critical today. And the way that I work most of my my coaching with my coaching clients is to really build attraction model businesses. But then once they're actually in working with us, that we continue to work with them, forever in a day. So we're kind of their agent for life, and that we're their go-to for absolutely everything. And, every single transaction, it leads to more business, whether it be from neighbours or family or friends or, business colleagues or whatever that might look like. So I think, you've got to work really hard to build that. So, a lot of agents during this time will be feeling quite tired. They'll be feeling quite, emotionally quite drained, because people, when they are stressed, do tend to take it out on those people that they work with. And so you might be seeing the best of people, but in tough times, you may be seeing kind of the worst of people. And you'll be taking a lot of that emotional kind of force. So I think, as agents, we really need to make sure that we are protecting ourselves in that time as well, and understanding, hey, listen, this is kind of what's going on. You might need to be a bit kinder to yourself. You might need to have less listings than what you might normally in a boom market, just because you need to be very protected of that, I would suggest. So I would definitely look at that. I think, there's two ways to really grow your business in any market. And I think the first one is to leverage your listing sales and results. So, really looking to say, okay, well, what can I do to make sure that everybody knows, in every form of medium, whether it be social media, whether it be, locally in the neighborhood or in real life, that they know that you've got a property listed, that you're working really hard for the vendor to make sure everyone knows about it. And then, of course, once it's sold, everyone knows about the great job that you did. And then I think the second thing, and depending on your days in market in the area, but, if your days in market are, moving out a little bit in your particular marketplace or in your precinct, to work an ethical program that targets those properties that are currently on the market. Because that they want to sell, that they're guaranteed sellers. So it's just a matter of making sure that if their current agent doesn't sell, that you're there to catch the business and to move forward with them.
Okay, low-hanging fruit. Okay.
Low-hanging fruit.
So coming back, I think we go to the same school about long-term relationships and client for life, and we're in the UK with way too transactional. We do one transaction and that's it. And then the buyers go into witness protection and that's it. And it's absolutely crazy. So what sort of strategies do you have to carry on that long-term relationship after a buyer has bought through you?
Yeah. Well, look, I don't know if this is appropriate, but I do have a free 51-point checklist that goes through literally what you should be doing from, just launched right through to settlement. And that's completely free. So that's just at sherriestoror.com/51-point checklist. So that's a really easy downloadable tool to find. But I do think, what can you be doing? I think, firstly, once you have sold the property, I think you need to have a pre-settlement process and you need to have a post-settlement process. And that post-settlement process means that, okay, well, once they've either bought or they've sold from you, that all of that communication that was happening doesn't just fall off a cliff, that you have a process of what's going to be happening that week, later on that month, and then, moving forward into the rest of the year. And so, my suggestion is, often the sellers might be having, remorse the next day or relief, but just getting in contact with them, having a process, making sure that it's a really smooth transition in terms of, contact details. So let's say if a buyer has moved into the property, do they have the same, pool cleaning man that's been looking after that pool for the last 10 years, the same gardener, just making all of those little processes, I think, a little bit easier. Then moving forward to making sure that you're contacting them every 3 to 6 months, through that first year, and then staying in contact, every single year. We've heard about anniversary cards, but, obviously the biggest mistake or biggest agent fail that I see is where agents actually get their PAs to write the cards, for them. And so, it goes from being an activity that should be very connected to instead being almost like damaging to the agent. And so if you're not writing that handwritten card, you'd be better off not writing one at all. But, it doesn't take much time to do that. And it's a really lovely little kind of reminder. But, every year you should be asking them, do they want to have a new appraisal on their property? Do they want to know what the new price is? And stay in contact, and always asking them for repeat and referral business. Do you know of anyone else who's got any real estate needs? Like, have you heard any rumors in the neighborhood? Has anyone been renovating, looking to sell? Like, give me the goss, So I think you don't always have to come in at, super polished and professional. I think, being a bit cheeky and kind of, getting them to see your full personality, I think is the best way to create long-term relationships.
I love that. I love standing out and being different. And actually, it's being disruptive. And I think asking those disruptive questions, you'll be surprised that what you get. Do you know any neighbours, or who's the next neighbour in your road that's looking to sell?
Yes.
Really, really simple question. And then coming back, one of the things that I've suggested now to people is, and I know the system's slightly different there, is that once we exchange on a property, we may have a number of days between exchange and settlement.
Yes.
Is to actually, let's just say you're the seller, Sherrie. I would say that what I'd like to do is jump on a Zoom call with you if possible, because Stephen's moving in a week's time. And I'd like to just shoot a little video going around the house of all the things that they may want to know. Where the boiler is, where your window keys are, where the stopcock is, etc., etc. Actually, can you tell me who your gardener is, who your nice dentist is, who your doctor is, and stuff like that? And then I would send that to me or Stephen and say, look, I know you're moving in 7 days' time. Just shot a little video with your seller, Sherrie, just to help you for when you move in.
That's lovely. I love that.
Okay, there you go. I'm giving back. So.
Love it.
So coming back to where we started, you talked about celebrity profiling, or
yes.
Celebrity profiles. So what did you mean by that, please?
Yeah, I guess, the best way to build a business, and we mentioned this earlier, was build an attraction model business. So people are coming into you. So instead of having to go out there and do the hard yards and do that old school prospecting, you've got these leads that are coming into you. And at the end of the day, the reason why we do prospect is so that we have a consistent level of income driven by a consistent level of sales, driven by a consistent level of listings. And of course, that comes from the leads. So I do love an attraction model business for that particular reason. So I think the best way to do that is for everybody to know that you are the agent, around town. And just in that older adage that you can't sell a secret when it comes to a property, I mean, we should also be shouting to the rooftop, what it is that we do and our level of services. And I think, a lot of people sort of shy away from this, I've found, because they feel really uncomfortable, talking themselves up or their services. But I think, the way that I always position it is that, in positioning you or your business, really what it is that you're doing is you are the solution to their problem, and their problem is that they want to sell. So, if you come in and you basically talk all about the process, it's always going to come down to commission, marketing, who's basically the lowest. Whereas I think, if you sell yourself in a particular way where they know that you're the best agent for the job, regardless, they're going to choose you. So I think building that celebrity profile where people want to work with you, where if they don't choose you, they have FOMO, fear of missing out. So you kind of want to have this prestige of, oh, yes, I listed my property with Stephen Brown. I listed my property with Sherrie Storor. So I think there's something really powerful in this kind of FOMO type situation, this status of working with a particular agent, and certainly the celebrity agent in a marketplace. So I think, a lot of agents, I don't know if this is true for you in the case in the UK, but certainly in Australia, we've got a lot of, agents who are career agents who've been around for a long time. So, if you're a young gun and you're kind of, keen to come in and carve out a niche for yourself and to carve out some business, but you're up against these guys who have been there for 20 plus years and they're absolute guns at what they do, it can be really hard. But I think by building a celebrity profile, you can take over that, because a lot of these career agents haven't really embraced some of the new techniques and modern technologies that we kind of have. And, specifically, I'm talking about social media. So I think, if you're coming into the the marketplace, and I think you can make, mass, noise on social media, so much so, far more so than typically most career agents. So I think you can certainly do some things today, like lead capture pages. You can create some funnels. You can really give some information, such as, the top 10 things that you need to know when selling your home, because regardless, I mean, we all think that there's some magic kind of pill or wand, that we all can kind of have to help us get more money. So I think consumers love to get that kind of information. And if they fill that out on a lead capture page, you've got their contact details, that essentially they're looking to be buying at some point, and probably in the near future. I think, social media, it can be about, having a wonderful database. And in my opinion, social media is a form of database. And so all of those media channels are those. But the second one is obviously your CRM. So making sure that you're staying in contact with them by sending out a weekly newsletter. That is really real and relevant. That's not just all about the agent, or here's my latest listings and, big cheesy photo of you, instead it's really about adding value. And so I find often doing things like coming soon to market properties or the stories of the sale, real kind of relevant in real time information is really helpful with that. I think dominating the letterbox is also really powerful. So for every single property that you list, I think there should be 5 letters that are going out. And I know this is super old school, but I think it's really powerful, because I think if you only list 3, properties in a marketplace, and let's say you don't take a property to auction, but you just, have the letter is just listed, under contract, just sold, and then your prospecting letter, that's 4 letters that are going out, for each one of those 3 properties. So in a quarter, you could really dominate that marketplace by sending out 12 letters, that are real personality rich, not these boring, just listed, just sold, another quality property listed by Sherrie Storor, like that snooze fest. You've got to put some real kind of personality into them. So I think that's a really great way of dominating the letterbox and dominating, locally. And then the last, real piece of the pie there, I think, is dominating in real life. So just making sure that you're a part of the community, that you're giving back. It's not always about throwing money at things, but actually, dedicating your time, making sure that you are out and about, that people do see you, that they do know you. That you're going to networking events. The schools, I think, are one of the biggest areas for growth, I think, in any marketplace. And, it's not always, as I said, it's not always about giving money. Sometimes it might just be being a part of a program that, is reading to kids, so it's about getting involved and being there.
Blimey, I definitely think we've known each other for years and years and years with everything you said. But I think it was funny. I was at my old stamping ground at the weekend, and I was talking about we walked past the library, and I said, when I was in this area, we used to have like a property clinic in the library where we used to help people, and then once a week for an hour, I used to go into the local charity shop and help there, and then we also used to read at schools as well, and go in and read at schools. And actually, in the UK at the moment, I've got involved in a campaign called Markers for Mindfulness, where sadly a 17-year-old lost his best friend, died by suicide in the school 3 years ago, because there weren't any wellbeing provisions in the school. And he set up a campaign where he provides stationery into schools, and the money that the school saves on their budget, they can then provide wellbeing provisions to the kids. We've been into I bought it to where I am, and we've been into about 35 schools in the area.
Wow, how incredible.
It's amazing, but the schools here are rationing paper. Teachers are spending money out of their own pocket. There's kids are coming into schools not being fed, and that's quite scary. So
very heartbreaking.
And I know here, so anybody watching this, if you want to get involved in the campaign, please get in contact with me, because I know, we've definitely made a massive difference. And I've had head teachers in tears saying, they can't believe what's going on. They're behind budget. So it's incredible what's going on. It really is.
Well, that sounds like an incredible initiative. And also, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, even just hearing you talk about it, it sounds like, you know, it's so full of joy for you in terms of that you can make a difference and make an impact. But also, you know, business does come back as a result to doing that, because people see that your heart's in the right place, and, you know, it tends to just be the next byproduct, right?
100%. So coming back, implementation. It's got to be
Yes.
one of the biggest challenges. So
Yes.
people come to your courses, and then their notes end up in a filing cabinet or on the shelf. So they've done their shelf development rather than their self-development. So how can you get these people to implement stuff that they've learned, put it into action, get it done?
Yeah. I think that's a really great question. And truthfully, it's something that I really struggled with as an agent, because I'm obviously have always been about education and always about leveling up in different forms. And, you know, I think you need to have timelines for things. So, you know, whatever it is that you're learning, let's say if you do go to a 2-day course, you might take, you know, you might write that there's 100 things that you would like to implement. I would then pull that down to 20, and you would immediately look to implement 3 of those. So the other, you know, 17, you might then decide to implement that over the course of the next 12 months until you go and do maybe, you know, that course again, you know, in the next year at the same time. So you might sort of say, well, listen, you know, in December, not a lot happens, so I'm going to do these 5 things. Otherwise, you might say, listen, in January, I'm going to do this one thing, and actually diarise those things. So I think, you know, looking at in terms of order of priority, for me, with how I've sort of structured my business is that when I do events, I don't typically do 2-day events or even full-day events. Usually I have half-day events or morning events, because I love to pump so much content in, and perhaps it's to my detriment that it can be almost at times a little bit overwhelming. So, you know, different people are going to, you know, want to hear different information at different points in time. So I'm always hoping that they can take a few things, you know, away. But I think going from that 20 down to 3 and then scheduling the other items that you feel are valuable is probably the best way to go about it. And delegating what you can. So if you've got a team and you decide one of those things is a project, you know, often it can be really daunting, you know, for your team member if you just go and say to your PA, hey, listen, we're going to do now a new listing kit. And then the PAs are like, well, okay, well, what am I putting in there? Whereas if you sit down with them and sort of say, okay, well, as part of the listing kit, here's, you know, 100 tasks that we need to do in order to create our new listing kit. And that could be from the folder to getting new profile photographs to new bio to new marketing campaigns, whatever that might look like. So, you know, if you then put a timeline on that to say, okay, well, listen, you know, we're in the new financial year. Let's say that we're going to have this completed in the next 90 days. So, you know, let's do these, you know, items this week. Next week, it will be this item. And so before you know it, there's been a lot of small incrementable sort of changes that have occurred, which when you look back, it's like, hey, I've got this rockstar listing presentation. And especially if you're a busy agent and a busy team, you know, it wasn't that hard to do because you broke it down into bite-sized manageable pieces. So I think if you do that with your, you know, one-on-one with your team members, I think it will, you know, help them to understand that. Give them some timelines, give them some dopamine hits when they're achieving their small projects and their small goals would be what I would recommend.
Perfect. Lovely. Thank you. You talked about listing presentation there, and you talked about going on a couple of listing presentations with John McGrath. I'm curious to know what you took away from John on listing presentations.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, you know, what I've learned from listing presentations over the years is at the very beginning, you know, when you're an agent who still, you know, doesn't really have a strong pipeline and you're in the listing presentation, you're trying to control everything and you're writing everything down and you're trying your best to control it all. I think as time goes on and you get more comfortable because you've got a very secure pipeline, you know, you realize it's really just about connecting with people and that you are there to solve their problem. And so, you know, really looking them in their eyes and really kind of having an engaging conversation where they feel like they're heard and they're listened to instead of just being spoken at. And I think, you know, that's what John is certainly a master at, which is making people feel really valued. And in that moment that he's with them, that they feel like the most important people in the world. And so, certainly that's something that I've always worked very, very hard to do. And I think John is a master at, there's no doubt.
Brilliant. I love that. Thank you. Couple of final questions, because I'm really conscious of time and I'm really grateful of your time. Thank you. So one of the things I know you set up was a Women in a Real Estate Agency group over there. And I'd like to know a little bit more about that. There's a Women in Estate Agency group, or a couple of Women in Estate Agency groups that have been set up. I think there's Women in Estate Agency group, Women in Residential Property, that both do an amazing job here. Both put on really good conferences. I've been very fortunate. I was asked to speak at one of them when it was on their first ones, which was very emotional for everybody. Because of my situation, because my wife passed away 3.5 years ago. So I shared my story of bereavement and my learnings from that. And Verona and Liana and Claire and all the committee doing the most amazing job, and Nicola Broomham as well. So, what was the reasons for setting that up, and how's that working over there for you?
Well, the first thing can I just say is that, whilst we might be looking for a community of, females, really at the end of the day, we're looking for our male ambassadors of change and people like yourself who are giving back and who can help create voices, because we can't create change unless there's everybody in the room, because often the people who aren't in the room are the people who need to be in the room the most to understand what some of the issues may be. I guess, I do feel like we have come a long way in Australia in the last few years. Of course, we still have got some ways to go, but for me, again, I wanted to give a platform to a lot more, female agents and women who are just absolute powerhouses in our industry. So that was really critical and important to me, because at that time, anytime we heard a woman on the stage, who was a female agent, essentially they were talking about, how they were being asked questions about work-life balance, which is important, but really I think their skill set is far beyond this, and that were the things that I really wanted to tap into. So I think that was incredibly important. The other part is that we haven't really in Australia had a lot of very high female business ownership. So, giving women a reason to want to be leaders in the industry, to be, thought leaders, but certainly to know that the business ownership, can be for them, and that the way that they want to be leaders doesn't have to look the same way, that I guess they were sort of led. So, even today I run a mastermind program, and this season I have chosen to do all women. So there's, it's a very sort of small group. It's contained, and we all sign confidentiality agreements, and we have incredible speakers who come on. But, it is really interesting. I tend to see the same kind of problems from the people that I work with. And one of the big ones is confidence. And, again, I see that these people are incredibly and so remarkable, but they don't always see it themselves. And then the second thing that I would say is just, often finding the time for themselves, that they're always feeling guilty. And, women, historically we are cultivated to be givers and to always nurse others first before ourselves. But I think, trying to really change that narrative instead of, filling ourselves so that we can help others is very critical. So, these are some of the things that I love to help, work through, and they were very important to me. And even I'm just writing my notes for the next mastermind session, and we're talking about protecting the golden goose, and we're the golden goose, right? We're the ones that are making. And I think this lesson is pretty much gender neutral, but we can all kind of give and give and give until there's nothing left, especially as agents, because we're service providers. But I think you do have to have those boundaries up, and you do have to, treat yourself with the same kind of advice that you would give to someone else at times as well. So I think that's critical.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing, and well done for starting it. It's a shame. It's a shame it's needed, but you've done an amazing job. So thank you. Right. So final question. So if you could tell the audience one thing, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, one thing only. Well, I feel like I've shared a bit today, Stephen, and I love the fact that we are definitely cut from the same cloth. I think, What would I suggest? I think if you're not working your social media and your database, it's time to get onto it and to create those lead nurture trails. So if you don't have a CRM that you're working to do those lead nurture trails, to have templates to be able to cut down your time, just invest in a really good database system, a customer relationship manager, and go for it. And really, protect your database into it. And as I mentioned, social media is a database too, so do the same over there.
Brilliant, fantastic, thank you. Well, look, thank you for being a wonderful guest, and thank you for your generosity of saying that people can get the 51-point checklist. So just remind everybody where they can get that again, please.
Yes, so it's just at sherriestoror.com/51-point checklist.
Okay, brilliant. And if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that as well?
Best way to find me is on social media. So at Sherrie Storor, which is spelled SHERRIESTOROR, or you can find me on my website, which is sherriestoror.com.
Amazing, lovely. Well, thank you for being a wonderful guest. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Please like it, share it, tag your friends, estate agents, colleagues, neighbours, anybody else in. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks very much. Thanks, Sherrie.
Thank you.